Okay, call to order, pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Nardi, would you take the roll, please?
Yes, here.
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 Here. I don't believe we have any recognitions today, Dr. Skinkis.
No recognitions.
Student Association report. Hello, everyone.
Full house today. Everybody's on board.
Yes.
So we have a quick one for you guys today. My name's Amanda. I'm the president.
I'm Madison, I'm the vice president.
I'm Jillian, I'm the secretary.
I'm Miriam, the treasurer.
I'm Nicole, I'm the director of communications.
I'm Ella, I'm the student spokesperson.
So we have a whole bunch of events coming up, and they're spread out throughout this winter. I'm going to have everyone talk about which one they're doing, and we're going to start off with Madison because hers is the closest.
Alrighty, so I am chairing the blood drive, which is coming up on November 10th. We are doing sign-ups during all lunches on the 3rd and the 4th. And personally, that's one of my favorite things that we do the whole year. It's really nice to see everyone come out and participate with that. I've been volunteering with that one since freshman year. And it's just honestly like being able to sit there and watch everyone being willing to donate blood, which might be uncomfortable for some people. It's just really awesome to see everyone like challenge themselves to do something better. So that's starting soon. We have some murals that are going to come up soon, so we're very excited to get that started.
Yes.
I'm doing cards for the troops, so basically we just write a holiday card to them, telling them a little bit about like where we're from, who we are, what we're involved in, and then wishing them happy holidays, thanking them for their service. This year I believe it's going to a group of troops in Chicago, so that's awesome, but they're from all across the country. So really excited for that, and that'll be happening November 11th and 12th before school, in lunches, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a big part of the thing that we're doing for Cards for the Troops is we're not just saying, like, thank you for your service, even though that is very important to say. We're saying that along with, like, hi, I'm Amanda, I'm a senior this year, and, like, telling them about yourself and hoping that they're having a good year, too. So it's more personalized, and it's not just, thank you for your service, happy holidays.
Nicole and I are in charge of Thanksgiving gift cards this year, and for that, RB collects money for gift cards for grocery stores such as Mariano's, Jewel, and Tischler's, so families at the community support services in Brookfield can make Thanksgiving meals.
So if you're not familiar, CSS is out of Brookfield, and they provide and promote new opportunities for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In their program, they try and strengthen these people's involvement in the community and independence, and we have a lot of our very own RB past alum that are supported by CSS. But this year it looks a little differently because of COVID. In the past, we've collected all types of Thanksgiving materials and stuff to make baskets for these families. But this year they're asking that we try and collect 30 gift cards out of the money we make, about $50 each, so that these families can get these gift cards and buy whatever's useful to them during the holidays.
Yes. And what's really nice is a lot of teachers at RB will say, okay, well, we're going to make sure that we can get you at least one gift card. So they'll be in charge of making sure they get the money, collecting it through the classes to have one gift card, which helps us out a lot.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Okay, and then next, which is going to be happening later on, it's going to start before Thanksgiving. We're going to be collecting, I want to say a week before Thanksgiving and a few weeks after till December 9th, as I'm doing the coat and blanket drive this year. I love it. It's personally my favorite. I've helped out with it every year. We have some amazing teachers who go to Kohl's, use their cold cash, like buy a whole bunch of stuff, use the cold cash, go back and buy some more coats, and keeps going. It's awesome. We are able to get in an insane amount of stuff. A whole bunch of students bring in coats and blankets. We just ask that they're gently used or new. If they're new, that's amazing. And then a different thing on a different note is we just had quarterly notes of acknowledgement. That's where we are able to recognize. Students are able to talk to their teachers in a little note and just say, hey, you're doing a great job. I appreciate you, which I think is very important. And we had amazing participation in that. We had it 2 days in the lunchroom, and then people were also able to scan a QR code and do it online if they didn't feel comfortable doing it by hand. And we had over 100 letters that were given to teachers, so I think it's awesome.
And then Mary, did you want
To talk about Spirit?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about our Spirit Fridays, which is a monthly occurrence here at RB, and basically it's just a really fun way to get school spirit, and basically we choose a theme, so this theme for this month is going to be Halloween on Friday, so everyone shows up in their spooky attire, but we basically have the teachers during the 6th period count the participation level, and this, how many winners? Usually two. Two winners will get some candy. So it was really awesome. Like 2 of the classes last time had 100% participation.
Which we love to see.
Love to see. And it's just really a fun thing to look forward to when there's not a lot going on, and just, again, school spirit. So
Great.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
Yes.
Tell me again the name of the group in Brookfield, CSS?
CSS.
And what does that stand for, do you know?
Community Support Services.
Okay, great. And this is great. Any
First
comments or
quarter's wrapped
questions?
up, everything's good?
Yes. First quarter went amazing. We're getting ready.
Is there a goal for the coat drive, and how many coats was last year?
I'm not sure specifically about the number for coats of last year.
Is there a goal?
There were a lot.
I think
we were like rolling a ton down the hallway in carts. Like
So
it
we
was.
gotta beat a ton this year.
Yeah.
10 plus 1.
Obviously, I can get those numbers from Miss Iola, Miss Kaler, and let you guys know. But off the top of my head, I don't know. But last year was amazing because we were obviously all in lockdown. Most of us weren't in school. And so a lot of people just were helping out because there were so many people who were in need. And it was amazing to see the amount of people who just reached out and were like, okay, let me help you with this. So we're really hoping that continues on this year because this need is still there. I'm almost positive we donated it to Salvation Army. So
Okay.
it's good.
Dr. Skinkis, could I ask you to include the coat drive information in our Friday update, just so the board has it?
Sure. Mr. Forty, can you send me the information via email? Okay.
I think last time we had mentioned that the programs that you're doing are a demonstration of your civic input, and we're certainly happy to see that it's coming from you. I think there was a comment, I don't remember if it was from me or someone else, about how many people are involved, and also what is the gender breakdown? Are we recruiting any more young gentlemen to join the ranks of those writing letters or participating?
So, obviously, like our first meeting, which we had said, it was in here, and I think we counted almost 100 people in this room for our first meeting, and that was awesome. One thing, the big part about essays, we are looking for leaders in the school, and we do not believe that gender should play a role in it. Obviously, it's great to have both guys and girls, but we're just looking for leaders in general. So,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Any more comments? We're good. Thank you, ladies. We do appreciate you coming out this evening. Do we have any visitor statements this evening? I didn't see anyone that would perhaps be here, but I will look around. Hearing none, moving on to discussion items quickly. Item A is district goal setting. As a reminder, we have the goal setting session on Saturday. You'll correct me if I'm wrong.
December 11th?
December 11th. That's on everyone's calendar. I know the group that was involved with us on the mission statement process about 2 years ago now. They will be getting notice of that in the near future. And I'm assuming that will be up on our website as a posted meeting so that people are able to attend.
Correct.
Thank you. IASB resolutions. Before I turn it over to Laura, everyone does have the packet in front. I know she was concerned that we got the paper version of the packet, but the electronic version was in board packet 2 meetings ago, last meeting as well as for this evening's. So, Laura, out of interest of time, but knowing your focus on this, what is the most efficient way to get through this? And for the board, these are resolutions from IASB that they would then bring back. Laura, as our voting member, would bring the board's wishes back on these particular items and be part of the larger school districts that vote on this, and this basically prioritizes their legislative priorities in Springfield.
Right. And so I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is, like, the vote that we send is binding in the fact that Ms. Haruska will reflect our wishes.
Yes.
But because we vote yay or nay, we are one of 900 school boards that have a vote. And just because we say yes does not mean that then IASB will send their lobbyists to the House or Senate floor to make that go forward, right? Like, it's a long, drawn-out process that starts.
Probably the easiest way to do this tonight would just be if there's any that a particular board member has concerns supporting the recommendations from the IASB.
So why don't I just give a nugget of information? Then there is a check sheet. I want you to think about it with the check sheet, because the first time you, and again, the hardest thing is there are many suggestions here. If this is the first time you're seeing this in writing, it's really worth reading it, thinking about it. There are many things that they're good, but they're just not the place of Illinois Associated School Board to lobby. And so when we say, yes, we're in support of that, that means we want you to take the resources you have, the limited resources you have, and go to Springfield and lobby the lawmakers that this is something we want to see passed. So it doesn't mean that we disagree with something, but sometimes it's just not the appropriate place. So I'll bring your attention to a couple. On number 1, page 9, there's the pre-service teacher education, and I handed out that little piece of paper. Last year, they voted against it. This year, because of poor reading scores and difficulty reading, particularly in the inner cities, there is a push, and the Illinois Associated School Boards is now advocating for this.
And this is one IASB does vote in favor of it, correct?
Yes.
They recommend support? Okay.
Yes. Now, I have, and I've been discussing this again with colleagues in my graduate program, that I have a little concern that the Illinois Association of School Boards, the lobbyists, are now going to step in and start to set new standards for teacher education programs. That's my concern, because that's what this starts to do. Because the teacher education programs are already pretty rigorous. And there's all the different tests that they have to go, and then there's all the in training and literacy. It puts no responsibility on families to say, if kids go home from school and they're not reading, they're still not going to learn how to read. So all the responsibility on the student reading is now on the teachers coming out of school. And I don't feel that they've given us enough evidence to show that our colleges preparing teachers are lacking and not providing this information. So read it through. Oh, and again, we want all kids to read, but I don't think the weak link is having teachers take more classes in preparation for their degrees to teach.
The way I read it, it is targeted at certain teaching programs that are more directly related to reading in the schools. I am, however, have your same general sentiment that it may be overkill on what is otherwise already provided.
So can we do this? My suggestion, I think that was the good background. I appreciate the extra. So on this one, we can just go through them chronologically, maybe the wrong word, in numeric order.
Yes.
And on this one,
Opposed.
IASB is saying support. We do a quick little straw poll. Do we want to agree or disagree?
Yeah, so I would say no, because already there are many courses that teachers take on their own. They have to have CE units every year that they're already taking to do extra reading and everything. So,
Okay. Does anyone agree or disagree or want to discuss that further, or can we say no on that particular item?
I would agree with that.
Okay. So
Opposed.
I
Opposed.
would, well, so then I
Okay.
would say that according to, because I'm making my informed decision based on the information that was provided in this packet, right? So it says that 43% of all teaching programs where is it? In a 2020 study, and again, it's a study, someone conducted it, studies can be spun any which way. In a 2020 study conducted by the National Council on Teacher Quality, 43% of university teacher education programs in Illinois earned a D or F grade for how they prepared students to teach scientifically proven methods for reading. I mean, I don't know. I haven't taken a reading methodologies class in a very long time, so I don't, like, I haven't taught reading in a while, so I don't know where we are with that. But the fact is that students, again, these are all the assessments we love to tout. 34% of Illinois fourth graders and 35% of Illinois eighth graders taking the test scored as proficient or above for their grade level.
So on the straw poll, you would be in favor?
I would say,
Okay.
yeah.
Mike, did I hear you say you'd be opposed, or did you want to?
No, I agree with Laura, and I think maybe you. I would be saying no.
Okay. Mona, did you have a thought?
I honestly, I don't have a strong opinion on that one. I basically, the way all this falls is, for me, I don't want guns in school. I don't want any unfunded mandates for legislators to put on teachers in school districts anymore, because we continue to have pages and pages of unfunded mandates and they never take anything away, and then it's burdensome on the local. And other than that, I don't really have any strong opinions on any of these unless that's the way they fall.
So on this one, are you opposed?
Sure.
Okay, so this one.
Okay. Bill, did you have a thought? Just make sure we're.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Laura.
Okay.
Her statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you did some additional reconnaissance on there. I appreciate that. So that's an oppose.
Okay, student safety and protection, does anybody, they're recommending we adopt, does anybody?
I would not
I'm
support that.
opposed.
No.
You're opposed?
No.
Okay, opposed, okay.
Okay.
School board member compensation, and I agree with them, it recommends do not adopt, and I feel to not adopt.
I would agree, so that's an oppose.
agree.
Any objections? How about we just do this, everyone kind of jump in and keep this a pretty good
Okay,
dialogue to
yes.
keep.
No
Okay.
strong opinion on that.
Okay.
Okay. And number 4, same thing, a board member child care, they're saying recommend do adopt. My sentiment, again, is I just feel we don't get paid for our job as volunteer, there's no conflict, so I would be opposed to that.
Correct.
How does the board feel?
No strong opinion. I don't.
Don't have kids to babysit.
Yeah. I mean, I
Well,
think
I
where this
just-
is coming from, that there was legislation in Springfield that is compensating lawmakers for childcare. It's a reimbursable campaign expense. We don't have campaign coffers here. We don't have reimbursement.
Right.
So I can go either way, honestly.
It's
So
okay.
I agree we should adopt. Again, the rationale behind it is that parents coming from lower socioeconomic backgrounds might not have babysitters. And I mean, Laura, if you got to go do board business, you got to go do board business, kid or no kid, right? So I don't have a problem with going with the do adopt.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion, but I understand the intention is to allow access for everyone to be able to
Yep.
serve. And so the point is to take the burden of service off of the financial burden for childcare. I don't, again.
Okay, so the IASB recommendation is support. I'm hearing.
For me,
Yes.
I find it
Opposed?
just cleaner to not take any funds, but I can go either way. So I would be opposed. You say adopt, and Lorena's saying adopt.
Yeah.
So
Mike?
what are the rest of you saying?
Is that going to push the cost on us?
Well, it comes out of our board budgets. You
Yes,
would-
it goes out of the
Yeah,
district.
right.
You would then submit a voucher for what it costs for babysitting.
But again, this is only if the legislature were to find it in their
Yeah.
wisdom to make that
Right.
I'd be
action.
willing to go forward with recommending.
Okay. I think that's enough for support, then. That gives us.
Okay?
That gives us
Support,
4.
okay? Okay. Virtual school board open meeting. I'm not in favor of that during times of COVID. I think it was, well, we had to because we couldn't come in public, but it just worries me that it limits, if we're all online, then not everybody can come and, present and talk and hear. I just think too many people would take boards could then, I'm not saying they would, just say, well, we're going to have to do it virtually, it's easier.
I'm opposed.
Are you okay? So I'm
Okay.
opposed.
Bill, do you have a thought on that one?
Thank you.
The policy says we have to be in person for a quorum.
Yeah,
so-
I prefer to be in person.
Okay.
Contrary to how I am right now with the phone, 'cause that's a whole separate matter.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot as the phone-in representative. That was probably a little.
Okay.
We already have a policy for people who can't make it to the meeting, and our policy currently says that we have to be a quorum in person.
But that's because state law says a quorum has to be established in person. This
What they would be arguing,
change
yeah.
state law that allow a quorum to be established outside of in person.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Except under emergency.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
except under the emergency.
Okay, so is everyone opposed? Yeah.
Okay, all right. I don't really have an opinion on this one. It's reorganizing the board 28 to 40 days. It's because I felt, you know how we had our meeting and we voted in the members within that 28-day window. They want to go up to 40. I don't really care. How does the board feel?
I'm in favor.
It gives the board and the administration a little more time and to get the results from the county and.
I mean, part
Okay.
of my reaction is the clerk should do their job and do this in a timely fashion, but in the case they're not, the board shouldn't suffer for it.
It's also simply if there isn't a meeting scheduled
Yeah.
that happens at 28 days
Right.
after the election, so.
Okay.
So I think that's a support.
Okay. Indigenous people, they're recommending that the curriculum add content related to Indigenous peoples.
I'm in favor.
Support. Anyone opposed?
Support.
Okay.
Okay. Science of reading curriculum, that they're recommending here to not adopt. Again, I feel it's kind of overstepping boundaries when the school boards start to dictate what curriculum should and shouldn't be. So I would go with their don't adopt.
I agree. Do not.
I would oppose, agree. Any contradictions to that from this end of the table?
Okay.
I'll
No?
agree with Laura.
Okay. Health and sex education, they want school boards to, their resolution, and they want, recommend we adopt that the school boards still have control over your health and sex education.
I oppose.
So what you're opposing, you're saying that the school board would not have control and that the state could dictate what is taught?
Yes.
I would agree. I also oppose this. And there was some timeliness even on the packet because it is state law. It was proposed legislation at the time that the IASB committee clearly reviewed it. It's now statutory, so.
So when you say oppose, you don't want the school board to have control. So what they're saying is oh, recommends do adopt, yeah, and we're opposed, because you want the, now I'm confused.
I do not want them to argue on behalf of the motion. I believe that the state should be able to set a health and sex ed curriculum that must be put out locally.
So it's standardized across the state?
I believe, as a minimum thing, I believe that's, what they're saying is individual school
board.
districts by school board cannot amend based on local desires what health and sex ed should be.
Any thoughts from this end of the table? Support or oppose the resolution?
So they want to put it down at the local level so that all 900 locals can do something different.
That is
Correct.
correct.
And so I would say no.
Okay.
So oppose?
No.
Oppose.
Okay.
Any objections? No? Okay.
Cannabis sales, this is talking about the percent of funds. They're recommending to adopt. What is your sentiment?
More money for schools? Yes.
Support.
Okay.
To take care of all the unfunded mandates.
Okay, this one again, it's that thinking, it's a great idea, I just don't think this is the place for it. It's the clean energy infrastructure funding, and, you know, Illinois Association of School Boards is saying, do not adopt. And the reason is that if you force the federal funds, force money from the federal government to come to support this, then it takes funds away from other areas of education where they're already coming. And now schools are already getting the money through grants and other sources. So what Illinois Association of School Boards is saying is, leave it alone as it is, because we get very little funds from the federal government. Schools are the responsibility of states. And we don't want to take what little money we get for, like solar panels or.
So I don't agree with IASB on this one, but it's not a hill for me to die on. so-
Nor do I. I actually would prefer that we do. Do not agree with the recommendation, and I would say they should lobby that if federal funds can be put into infrastructure for clean energy, we lobby on that behalf. That's my opinion.
Okay,
Any
and so
thoughts from down here?
I'm support
understand.
them, so that's 2 and 2.
Okay.
And what is your sentiment?
So did this resolution get proposed forward before all this infrastructure?
Yes, all of
bill?
these would have been before ARPA, for sure.
Probably, yes.
So like even last year, this came forward.
Probably, yes.
So if this infrastructure packages happen, we're likely to receive funds anyway, right?
Right. And so that's why I agree with Illinois Associated School Boards. Money is already there in other ways. We need federal funds for other things.
What's the straw poll at right now?
2-2.
We're to,
What do you got?
I say we do adopt. I say yes. We adopt, recommend adopt. So opposed to whatever the school board, this IASB is.
okay, now I've lost track. This
So
has
that's
gotten very
that's
confusing.
3-2 opposed. We're opposing IASB's position.
Okay, so
Thank
we're
you.
supporting the
No, Illinois
resolution.
School, ISB says do not adopt. And I'm
So they're
with them.
opposed, so we're saying support.
We're saying support.
Bill,
You're
you might be a
saying support?
tiebreaker role here.
But Ramona had, what you were.
I'm sorry.
I have no strong opinion.
Yeah.
How about you give one just keep it moving? Opposed? So if you have no strong opinion, you're present to go with the majority?
Sure.
So, okay,
That's what I
majority.
say.
Okay.
So that puts us in the support column. Bill, did you want to jump in at all? Please give me a shout if you do.
Support.
Support, he said.
Okay.
Number 12?
Electric school bus charging stations, federal funding. Again, this is, we're saying that they want, and they're recommending do not adopt because, their decision is there's only so much money that comes from the federal government. And if,
So I think the same logic
It
kind
falls
of
in the
applies
same
here.
category for me. I support the infrastructure.
But
for
if we,
electric.
so my only concern, and when
understand.
we hear about our budget, very little money comes from the federal, and that's our Title I. And the Title I always serves, and you could ask, Dr. Smetana, but that Title I supports our most at-risk students.
But I don't think they're taking the
This is not,
Title
yeah.
I money away from the free and
Okay,
reduced
so,
lunch.
all right.
Different funding.
All right.
Well, what they're concerned is that it would cut into that funding.
Well,
I
and yeah,
understand.
this is a Champaign initiative. I'm
Okay.
actually quite familiar with their transit system. I know they're really into electric charging, so I would support this one.
Okay.
More so than the prior. Any objections to that from down here? Nope.
No.
No, okay.
Landscape, federal funding.
Now, this one they wanted to support, which I thought was interesting. Can we just
Yeah.
agree,
Right.
can we agree with that one?
So we're doing
Any-
all the federal funding, basically?
Any objections on that one to support?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Do we have land for a rain garden, Dr. Skikas?
No. But we're one in 900 votes, so it's just,
Okay, moving on.
Expand broadband, internet access.
I agree.
anybody opposed to the position?
Okay. Number 15, I agree with Illinois Association of School Board. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think the school board, we're not in position to mandate what families are doing in their home. I just don't think that's our place. I think other.
It's about access to guns, which theoretically would impact schools because people under the age of 18. I understand that even if it's passed, it probably has very little teeth.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with Laura. This is really outside their swim
This
lane
is-
here.
I get
This is
that.
well outside the.
I do understand.
I mean, this is us telling people what they need to do in their houses. Yeah.
So that's
I just-
opposed?
I'm opposed.
Any objection from down here? No?
Okay.
So
And-
we're agreeing with Illinois to do not adopt.
Correct.
Right.
And then, last but not least, correct?
Yes.
That was all of them, right?
No, number
Oh, there's one
16.
more, school code review. Support.
That's funny that they said do not adopt, but, because, Chicago doesn't follow the school code because they have over 100,000 students in their home rule. They don't have to follow the school code. So I have no opinion beside that one, but what is your sentiment?
I could go either way. To me, looking at statutory books seems like a good exercise. I'm not sure why they would be opposed to it, so I would support it, but I don't think it's worth, again, not a hill for me to die on.
Yeah, this.
Anyone?
The school code is that thick book. It's 105, the law book. You know.
No,
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so any objection? Well, so are you in
I don't
favor or
know.
opposed?
I don't really care.
Okay.
Yeah, because
All right.
Chicago's home rule. They do what they want.
Anyone?
No.
Okay.
We
I
don't
think
care.
we
Okay.
don't- Yeah.
Okay.
Can
And
we
then-
summarize the next ones, or is there anything specific
Well,
that
and
needs
these
to
are
be pulled
just
out?
positions, they're, going over their positions as the board. But
Yeah.
those were the resolutions that they were bringing through. These are just
Thank
their
you.
position statements.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. That's a lot of information. Thank you.
Can we skip to the administrator presentation?
Absolutely, yes.
That's going to be the next longer presentation.
Let's take this out of order and go to the, what number is it? I'm sorry.
It's under the...
Principal's report?
Yeah, we're done with it. Well, maybe ask if there's additional discussion first.
Okay. Again, any additional discussion items, thank you, to bring up later in the meeting? Anyone? Okay.
So under the principal's report, Dr. Freitas, would you want to introduce your team and the school performance data report so I can get the administrators home?
Of course. Good evening, honorable board members. Today, my administrative team will be presenting school performance data from the 2020-2021 school year.
Dr. Freitas, what page are we on in the board book? Just so I'm sorry.
150 or
Before you
something.
start talking, I want to make sure I'm tracking.
What is it, Kristen? 180?
Thank you.
Way down.
So what's important about the school performance data that's being presented this evening is that we remember the conditions of learning of last year at the height of the pandemic. So, right, we had hybrid learning, in-person and online learning. We had guidelines from ISB that said grades should do no harm. We had flexible attendance practices, limited clubs and sports opportunity, and students had access to resources at home while studying that we didn't have it. So as we present this data, it looks good. There was a lot of improvement. I'm really proud of my teachers, my students, and my admin team for rising to the occasion. But at the same time, please look at it through the lens of the situation of last year, right? The height of the pandemic and everything that came with it. With that said, I would like to introduce Brendan Curtin and Dave Mannon to present on student engagement and average daily attendance.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Hector. We originally had talked about trying to get the whole admin team up here as one big unit, but the room does not offer itself to that, so we're kind of going in order here. Gentlemen, performance indicator number 1, average daily attendance.
That's me. Good evening. Just going to give you a brief summary. So the number that we landed on was 96.3%. That was just actually reported out on our student report card. 88 for the 2021 school year was up 0.5% from the previous year. Obviously, it was likely due to the pandemic and the hybrid remote nature of the school year. There's a small chance, as Dr. Freitas alluded to, that this number will be not as high for this current year as our students have fully returned back to in-person learning. Also, we are seeing first quarter here an increase in tardies. There has been an increase in absence as well due to students staying home if they're having cold symptoms, things like that. Some action steps that we have are currently doing and have done are our Skyward training. We just completed that with our dean's office. Skyward is our data system, and really looking at how we can be effective and efficient with some of the programs and reports that they offer us. We have 2 new deans. Well, I think they're new in regards to their first year with students in the building, right? So pulling and reporting out on some of that data and how we can utilize that data to, with our interventions in the building in regards to attendance. Dean-led mentoring groups for our chronic truants. We hold a Monday morning meeting and review all students that have 5+ absences. And through that meeting, we really look at how we can intervene. And so they set up mentoring groups through Remind, through in-person check-ins, lunch meetings, things like that with our students. We're going to continue our home visits for our students that are chronic with 10+ absences. We'll go to their home, see what's going on, see how we can help and assist. There's been individual problem-solving team meetings with BEST small team group, which consists of social workers, counselors, psychologists. Weekly attendance reviews, we talked about that. We used the Remind 101 platform, and that's kind of our text-to-message students through that platform too. And we expanded that last year through COVID, and we saw an expansive amount of communication that came through there, and we utilized that heavily. So communication out to families through that and students, and ongoing outreach to families in need. And then Brendan has a couple as well.
Sure. I'd like to touch on performance indicator number 2, student engagement. There's a lot of data there in terms of engagement coming in at 61%. But if you scroll down to athletic participation, a couple tables down, excuse me, you'll notice we took a hit in total athletic participation, 1 and 2 sport athletes. Ironically, we did see an uptick in 3 sport athletes. I think that can be attributed to having 4 athletic seasons. So we might have some more 3-sport athletes. However, with seasons overlapping, I feel like athletes were kind of forced, their hands were forced a little bit to pick one over the other instead of having traditional seasons. Factor in travel, sports, things of that nature, student athletes electing to work. It certainly affected the activity participation numbers. And obviously, we know this is all attributed to COVID-19 pandemic. And again, we feel there's some residual effects that are taking place in the current school year. It is not just limited to Riverside Brookfield High School. In my discussions with other athletic directors, other coaches at other schools, feeling the same effect to some degree. I am excited to share we're sitting at about 395 fall athletes, so it's solid. It's certainly not where we want to be, but it's a step in the right direction. We know it's going to take a little while to get back on the right path. Some of the plans that we're trying to implement as we move forward, implementation of Student Athlete Leadership Committee, identifying who some of our student athlete leaders are within each sport-specific program and getting them together once or twice a month and share best practices in terms of what other programs might be doing to get an uptick in numbers, as well as discussing best leadership practices. In addition to increased structure in the off-season program opportunities, additional youth camps and clinics fostered by our coaches in the off-season. I know there's some former coaches on the board, and what makes a team special is the amount of time invested, right? So if we try and strengthen some of our off-season programs or align some of our off-season programs, we feel like it will make for an easier transition for our multi-sport athletes to get back on board competing. So with that, I'll kick it back over to Dave regarding activities and some of the steps we're taking in that regard.
Yeah, thanks. So if you look at the extracurricular participation by grade level there, you can see total that we're down. However, we ran 35 clubs and activities through a pandemic, had a full production of a fall play and a spring musical. And so, the 61%, looking at the 2017 number of 66%, having 61% in the pandemic was pretty outstanding, and that's contributed to our sponsors in just the creative ways that they were meeting with their students, whether doing a double cast production like our musical and theater department did, and or just getting creative with different opportunities, helping PAWS increase their participation probably by 75, and that's just getting out in the community where it was safe outdoors and doing community-led based volunteer programming. So that is really fantastic, and we're looking for a great year. And when you look at the students involved in one activity or sport, I think it really goes along the lines of what Coach was saying here in regards to, overlapping seasons, a lot going on at one time. And so it's great that we see that number. That number is actually up, that 491 from in previous years. However, when you kind of put everything at once at the same time period, it's really hard to continue the numbers that we had in students that were involved in 2 activities or sports or 3 activities or sports, and that's where we saw the decline. If you look at the activity participation, that's that third chart. So total activity participation, and this is students that were involved. They could be involved in sports, but we're looking just activity specific here, was 505 compared to 677. So really, we're still at a good mark there. Like I said, kids were involved and engaged. And I think that's a pretty decent number. And I know just based off of what we're seeing so far that that number is going to be above where we were at in 2019, 2020 of 677.
So just to confirm, those were clubs and sports that met remotely for the entire year as well as those that were in person. So that is still a good amount of the population.
Correct. Some of those activities, again, could not run to full capacity, so they would do chested virtual competitions. Model UN couldn't go out and do their competitions in person at the Palmer House. They have a 3-day event. So a lot of those scenarios were kind of pulled back. Robotics was fully, they taped actually their competition and sent it in. So there was no, obviously, in-person experience, and so that, I think was a deterrent to some, but, for others, they really got creative and did, some phenomenal work there. But yes, you're correct. And then in regards to what we're doing this year, we have a lot going on in regards to engagement. Right off the bat, we had at our freshman orientation, we held an activity fair there. So that was great to initiate all of our new students coming in. We had a welcome back night for everyone in our community here to come back and just get reacclimated to the building and what we have to offer. We have QR code posters throughout the building that link our students up with our survey that they can click on one of our 42 offerings and activities and athletics to complete an interest form. It also goes to the website, our activity website, where they can contact their sponsor and get a hold of them. A lot of our activities haven't started yet, so there's plenty of time for parents that are listening right now. I just looked at some of the numbers. We have around 575 students that were involved in some sort of activity from first quarter, and then looking at the amount of activities that we just haven't started yet, just based off their season, it's really looking good in regards to what we have in front of us. We also, which is really cool, have had some creative ideas and packets presented to us in regards to new activities. Cycling club, a girl lifting club, just really, different ideas that we haven't heard before. And, if students are interested, all they have to do is contact me. We go through the process and link the sponsor, and away we go. And so I think it's been a pleasant surprise to see some of the creative ideas that are coming out of our student body, and we'll continue to push social media. We'll continue to link up students with different spirit weeks. We've done some spotlight programs in the cafeteria last week. We had a rock band perform. So we just try to outside of the box and offer a wide spectrum of activities for our student body here, especially this year.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Brendan.
I think before the end, any questions or comments? And even from Elena and Claire, I want to make sure we don't not include you from over there.
I would just say that a lot of the, myself included, I know many of the kids involved in the musical this year like that, I think can attribute to probably 50 less kids participating in athletics just because we were forced to, we had already committed to the musical in December and then came around the spring sports season. Like for me, I played badminton and I just wasn't able to do that this year. And there were a lot of clubs where we lost a member just because of the way they had to run and people weren't interested in that. But I do think that it'll be back.
Elena, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I am excited to see because especially since I did attend one of the lunches with Dr. Freitas here in this room, and there were some ideas going around with the students about new clubs that they wanted to implement. So I was excited to see that there were students being actively engaged in wanting to start up those clubs on their own and participate in school-led activities like that.
Great. Any more comments or questions from the board?
I hope there's just continued outreach to pull more in and, offer them up as low stakes things to join.
One thing on that, I was talking with some of the clubs I'm in, and we realized that in middle schools especially, clubs are usually something you join the first week of school, and then you're in it for the rest of the year. And if you want to join in the middle of the year, you can't do that, where it's so different here at RB. And that's a message we're just trying to spread to as many people as possible, not even necessarily about the clubs I'm in. Just so many clubs, if you send an email or show up to a meeting, then you can become part of that club, that it's not like a rigid first week thing.
Good point. Anyone else?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite Ms. Beth Augustine, Assistant Principal Student Services, and Mr. Kevin Baldus, Director of Special Education, to present on the 4-year graduation rate and freshmen on track.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Good evening.
Good to see everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it has been a while. It has been a while. So we're going to start with Freshmen on Track. This is a relatively new goal because it's new to the school report card. And really the purpose is to monitor how our freshmen are accumulating their credits in core areas to hopefully ensure graduation within the 4 years that they're here at RB or sooner for some students. Again, based on the number of having 5 classes and no failures in a core class. We are, for our current sophomores, we're down just a bit from the previous year, 0.31%, which is not too bad considering that we were in a pandemic in the first semester. Our freshmen were home, and when they were in 8th grade, they really didn't get the opportunity to experience our school through Future Bulldog Night. They did not take a placement exam. I shouldn't say that. They took a placement exam, but there really wasn't the follow-through during the 4th quarter like we normally would have had or could have had. So, there definitely was the do no harm to the class for year 2020. So again, I think that 0.31% is pretty good considering where we were at last year with our freshmen. And then we broke down some data. I think Kevin's going to share a little bit about that.
As of August 2021, the class of 2024 had 374 students in it on track to graduate. There was 18 students that were found to be not meeting the criteria of being on track. Those 18 students, 8 of those 18 were students with IEPs, 10 females and 8 male students out of that 18. The breakdown of 8 white non-Hispanic students, 6 Hispanic students, 2 black non-Hispanic students, and 2 multiracial students out of those 18. 1 student was outplaced, and the majority of the students that we saw that fall in that 18 were students that are some of our most intensive students that had multiple reasons why they were not doing well or passing those classes to be on track.
And so when the state pulls this data, I am able to see names, and then I go into our student information system to kind of break down who those students are by gender, race, and so forth. And then those students are now our current sophomores who we are closely monitoring. Some of them did attend summer school, and so they are in fact on track to graduate. However, the data that the state pulls is always in May, and it's prior to any summer school work that has been done and able to be reported. And we just move on now to the next freshman class as far as what the state is looking at. But as a school team, we're obviously concerned about these students and trying to make sure that they are continuing to move forward with graduating in 4 years. And listed below are just some of the practices that both student services and the special education department will be following, monitoring our DNF list closely. The first quarter just ended. We just received our first reports for DNF for the quarter, really ensuring that those students are getting the supports needed to minimize failures for a semester. We work very closely with the dean's office. Oftentimes, it is attendance issues that are impacting these students not being successful. So coming up with creative ways for them to find the motivation to come into school, whatever that may be. And you want to share?
Sure. So the special education department, during PLC time on Thursdays, we do a small team where a case manager or one of our social workers, as well as one of our school psychs, will recommend some students that we see are falling behind. And that IEP team members will meet to talk about some interventions, some strategies that they will use moving forward to bring those students' grades up, as well as what are some other underlying things that are holding them back from doing well in their classes.
And I think our current freshmen are in a very unique situation in that they did not take a placement exam last year as 8th graders, so we were really relying on information and feedback from the 8th grade teachers as well as MAP data. Some of that is not necessarily the best indicator of how successful that student would be. So we're being very diligent in looking at how students are progressing, especially our freshmen. Do we need to make some schedule changes right now? Are they placed too high? Are they placed too low? Sometimes when they're not placed correctly, that impacts the motivation. So it's just new challenges that we haven't had before, but we're working through them.
What is the current freshman on track rate?
So our current freshmen, we won't know until next year when they are going into sophomore year.
But don't you guys monitor it in these weekly meetings? Sorry. So a recommendation by the consortium, the University of Chicago Consortium, is to definitely monitor on a weekly basis the freshman on track rate, because then you're able to implement any interventions immediately. So for example, if the student, if you see that the majority of the students are failing that first period class, that might mean that they're not getting here on time. And that would probably be a reason, as a result of the pandemic. Or are they failing their last period class? Are they cutting that last period?
I believe you
or
got
are
that.
they overplaced, underplaced?
Yes.
That's what you have at the bottom of 186, right? You're monitoring the week.
Yes, that's through problem solving team. Yes, the counselors are monitoring the DNF list if students are failing.
Well, so then how many students are on the DNF list currently? Do you take a wild guess? Sorry.
That I would totally be guessing because we just finished grades. I believe Dr. Freitas just asked for that information from our data processing manager. But understand that when you look at incompletes, we have a number of students that were issued incompletes because they were maybe out due to quarantine, they were out due to hospitalization. We're monitoring that. Really where I think that data is important is at the semester, that we're ensuring that those students, if we're making some changes, because any student that failed a course at the quarter, their failure, regardless of what their percentage is bumped up to a 50%. So we try to connect with those students so that they don't feel like it's a hopeless situation where I have no shot of passing this class. Where we are making changes now is, let's say a student has 7 classes and they're overwhelmed. So maybe we'll drop a class at a study hall. A lot of that monitoring, or all of the monitoring, is going through starting with the counselor, reaching out to the social worker, school psychs, bringing them to small teams. Our small team meetings are every week, and so we're really bringing our most at-risk students and struggling students to those meetings.
From a special education lens, I think it's the case manager's job. They do weekly grade checks, meeting with families and communicating with those students, being with their IEP team members as well, to keep those grades up and to find out what to do the problem solving. So it's really like that second half of a case manager's job outside of their teaching responsibilities.
And another reason I ask about the D grades is because I've always personally, professionally had an issue with FOT, just because you could be on track and have all Ds, right? And technically you didn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's why I always ask, of that 95% FOT rate,
yes,
how many of them had Ds? Because they're on track.
Yes.
But we know that a D.
Sure, we want to raise the bar. Yes, so we're not
learning.
We should settle for
Yes,
these,
right. We're definitely looking at
Just-
students who are academically, it's not just these students that are not going to hit the target for a state report. It's really looking at students' grades comprehensively.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
And if you want to see some of that information, just send it over the weekend so I can give them a little time to pull that. So I think that's a good question. The way I interpreted your question is, we don't just want to wait till we get the report. We want to make sure we're keeping track of this report on a regular basis.
So,
And I know that's what we're doing.
right. Previously, I worked at a high school. Currently, now I'm on a grant. I followed my students all the way into college. But when they were freshmen and sophomores, we pulled the FOT rate weekly.
Okay.
And it just gave us a very in-depth, we were able to monitor changes, right? We were able to notice if students from week 1 to week 4 dropped, and then we wouldn't wait until the semester. Because by the end of the semester, it's too late. They've already failed.
The
So-
counselors receive their students' D and F and incomplete list every week.
Every week,
Yeah,
okay.
every week. So, and it's all grade levels. But yes, we can, any of that data we can absolutely share.
Thank you.
you're monitoring these Ds and Fs weekly just to help these kids move along in the right direction, which is going to help them at the end of the year when we measure after their freshman year if they're on track.
Correct.
So we're giving them interventions from week one.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right, and again, these current freshmen, it's even trickier.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Graduation rate?
Okay. So,
For board, it's on page 190.
Do we skip SAT?
Yeah, Kylie comes up SAT.
Okay.
She talks a lot, so we let her go last.
Okay.
Just kidding,
I'm just
Kylie.
trying to keep
Just
track of
kidding.
this packet
so we'll
here.
move on to graduation
I'm off
rate.
page here.
The graduation rate for class of 2021 was 95.1. Every year I do a little projection to kind of see where we're going to be. We were off or 1.4%, and some of that is explained below. The good news, we did have 8 of our students not graduate during the May ceremony, but did come back to summer school and went through the credit recovery program, and they were able to graduate in the summer and then were counted as part of our graduation rate. You want to share some?
Yeah, so some of the students that, unfortunately, by state standards, when it comes to graduation rate, if we have kids that are in special ed that are going to go on to adult like transition services, they do count against our graduation rate. So we have 11 of the 18 they did earn the credits to technically graduate, but that diploma is held so they can go into adult transition services that we currently have. One of the students that did not finish on time did come back is in school currently, trying to complete their coursework. 4 of those 18 are some students that are still outplaced and doing the same thing of trying to earn those credits towards graduation. And then 1 student that we had did not return this school year.
And of the 21 that the state recognized did not graduate, only 4, and I say only 4, which is really good, were actually considered drops. It's one of the lowest numbers that I've seen in a long time, because historically it really has been as high as 13. So given that we've just come out of a pandemic where we really had students disengaged from school, or you hear students being disengaged, the fact that they were able to make through, and a few of these drops had actually happened before the pandemic. 3 of the 4 actually reported going into a GED program, again, which it counts against us. And then we had 1 that had reported going to an alternative program. When I first started looking at this information, sometimes there would be students that left and would get lost in the system, or they would say they'd be going somewhere, and unless they enlisted or enrolled in a state school where SIS picked them up, they could be in a school somewhere and receiving an education and actually graduated, and we wouldn't know it. So we've made it our practice now, if we can't find where a student's at, we will call the student, call the parent, and say, did your student end up going to school somewhere? Oh yeah, they graduated, even if they ended up at Trinity or something like that, we wouldn't necessarily know that that's what happened. So I think we've gotten very good at our data tracking with the graduation rate. And then, as Kevin mentioned, with the transition students, while it looks like it's 95.1, when you add back the transition students, it's really 97.6 students that actually met graduation requirements.
So just from my education, the special ed students, they don't get a diploma because they still are getting transition services?
But actually, the diploma is held. It's not. It's still there when they do finish.
Okay.
It used to be when they would age out at 22. Now it's the completion of that school year of their 22nd birthday. But that diploma is there when they're done. It's actually pretty nice for me to present some of those kids their diplomas when they're finished and moving on to, I guess, we consider.
Does that count for graduation rate in the year that they actually age out?
Yes, and there's the adjusted cohort. If you notice under each of the dates, there's the adjusted number.
Oh, understood. Thank you.
Yes, and those are students that may have either decided to take their diploma and no longer receive transition students, and it's also students who may have returned back to RB for the next school year and ended up earning their diploma, so then they can be counted as our adjusted cohort rate.
So the adjusted graduation rate could be higher than 97.6 in the end.
Correct,
We just-
the
we
5-year.
just- We just have to let it play out until,
Age 22 or?
well, until they
It's always
decide-
5 years. We
Yeah,
only
it's
adjust
2
it after
years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And then on the next page, again, just some projections for the class of 2020. So you can see where kids are currently at. Unfortunately, that's where I see a number of drops. And that'll definitely be our charge for the remainder of this year, to try and keep as many of those seniors enrolled in school, engaged in school. You can see that we already have 7 of our special ed students who are planning on staying on for transition. So again, that's my projection of 94.6. The goal is to stay right around there and not let that slip any further. There's some action steps to just continue to keep our graduation where it's at, or to enhance it. I don't know if you want me to read through any of those.
Do we keep the students who we outplace in the same population as the students who attend here, as far as the number counting?
Yes, we are responsible for them, absolutely. Yep.
So they're not in this chart on the top of page 191, dropped?
So
Fifth year.
those are students who have officially disenrolled from RB, and those are the students that I will go back in May and try and see if they landed somewhere and actually earned a diploma, and then we can report that to the state.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is the number 7 of students with IEP transition, is that the maximum number of students that would be eligible for transition, or those that have identified they will be using them at this time?
They've been basically tracked through their IEPs that they're found that they're going to need some additional services and supports more than, say, some other students that would be in the special education department. And that's based on the case manager and work with the parents and the IEP team to determine if transition services are appropriate or not.
And that number can ebb and flow, right?
Yeah, it does change. It
Yeah.
absolutely does change. Depending on, some students might receive some outside support that they feel better to go and do their work in a job placement. I had a young man that just graduated today, and he's often working and has 2 jobs, and he left transition. So it is changing all the time.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, looking?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and last but not least, I would like to introduce
I'm going to stay up here for
Miss Kylie,
For the show?
Assistant Principal, Curriculum Instruction. Let's do it.
What page was
Kevin's holding his breath.
I know he is. I got some cues for
I gotta keep up. Great. I gotta watch for my signals. Right. Yeah.
What page would we
If
be
I miss the
starting
signals,
This is on
If I go like
188.
this, you don't like.
Yeah, deep sighs. There's a whole litany of things where I can tell. So I am going to be presenting on college and career readiness data as measured by the PSAT. Just a couple of things to remember in the context of this data is that this is the second year that we're reporting the data in this format, so that's why there's only 2 graduating classes represented. I will continue adding until we get a 5-year snapshot, and then we'll kind of go from that 5-year snapshot moving forward. We're looking at students specifically who began with their 8th grade placement with us, taking the PSAT 8-9 as 8th graders, and then those students who stayed with us through their junior year SAT, because we're looking at growth as one of our benchmarks. And again, as Dr. Freitas stated, the class of 2021 spent the last quarter of their junior year and their entire senior year working under some kind of pandemic. So this data is actually reflective of an October test date during their senior year where not even everyone was able to be in the building at that point. So there's some context for this. As we go through the data on the charts, I've provided what those benchmarks are as well as the expected growth targets. And I've also made note of how many students are in each graduating class cohort so that you can see kind of the full spectrum of where I'm taking my numbers and getting those percentages. So when you're looking at the first chart of the 311 students in the class of 2021 whose data files are complete with us from that 8th grade placement test to their junior SAT, 75% of those students met the ERW benchmark of 480. That's down 1% from the class of 2020, so the year before them. And 62% of students in this cohort met the math benchmark, which is down 1% from the class of 2020 as well. I consider this SAT data and this kind of comparison glimpse to be really the first real academic data that we're pulling out of the pandemic. We spent a lot of time talking about what is the pandemic's impact going to be on academics and on a student's ability to perform on college and career readiness. And what we're seeing now with a 1% dip is very, very slight. So as we continue going through this, when you look at, with the class of 2021, the 78 students who did not meet benchmark in ERW, 14% of those students did achieve expected growth. That is consistent with the previous year. So a very consistent measure of students who did achieve expected growth despite not meeting benchmark. In math, and I know Lindsay Minaw is watching from home, so you have to give Lindsay a shout out when I'm about to say this part. In mathematics, of the 117 students who did not meet math benchmarks, 29% of them achieved expected growth, which is actually a 7% increase over the class of 2020. So we were still able to see, and for me as an English person, it's even more surprising sometimes to see like, what, they did what in math while there was a pandemic going on? Even on my best days, not even close. So that was very exciting to see an increase in this story. So when we look at the big picture, and the big picture is really in my figure 3 chart, we're looking at 78% of students in the class of 2021 either met or exceeded ERW benchmark and or achieved expected growth. So 78% of our students are either where College Board says they should be benchmark-wise or grew as much as College Board said that they should grow. That, again, is down just slightly, 1% from the class of 2020. And when we look at mathematics, 73% of the students in the class of 21 met or exceeded the math benchmark and or achieved that math expected growth. Here's another bump up because we grew 1% in that area of mathematics. So then that brings us to that last chart that I showed with the red, because ultimately these are the gaps that we need to close, right? This is the important number for us as much as the last number was, because this captures the students who did not meet the benchmark and they also did not make that expected growth. So for the class of 2021, we're talking about 22% of students and those test takers who did not meet either benchmark or expected growth on ERW. That's up a little bit. That's an uptick over the previous year. So a few more students who didn't hit either of those benchmarks. And in mathematics, that was 27% of the test takers, which is actually an improvement because it is a decrease of 1% from the previous year. So kind of the moral of that story is, when we look at it, we don't see that really scary hit to college and career readiness that we kind of sort of imagined that we would, because we had no idea what was going to happen as a result of the pandemic. In terms of action steps, our goal is always to increase the number of kids who are meeting that benchmark or that expected growth, and then decrease the number of students who are not meeting either of those. And the nice part is, you know, when I report that we're talking about 22% of students who didn't meet an ERW, that represents 67 students that we know who they are, and we can go get them, and we can help to, intervene. Obviously, however, what's important for us is, to Ms. Gaska's point earlier, intervening on the front end, right? Intervening as early as possible. And so that is where some of the new things that we've implemented, like the STAR assessments, come in, because now we're tracking kids in a really comparable way at their freshman level and at their sophomore level. And so as we look at action steps to increase college and career readiness, it really starts at that 9th and 10th grade level, with us being able to identify students who are on pace not to meet benchmark, and teachers have the ability then to adjust their instruction, as well as we have the ability to dispatch interventions. Some of those interventions, the FTE that we used this year to bring in some extra interventions, and that's why I wanted to really capture that in the summary and action steps, because those initiatives that we brought in this school year are directly speaking to us, trying to make that number shrink so that number of neither benchmark nor growth shrinks by the time they get to their junior year. Next year, we'll have STAR at the 11th grade year too. So we will have some additional data points throughout the 11th grade year that would be triage at that point, right? Because we've worked through 9th and 10th grade year, but we would still have something to be able to track and to be able to be very mindful about the interventions that we put into place.
So, quick question, if I could. So, the 311 total test takers.
Yes.
It represents the individuals who took PSAT 9 and then SAT as October of their senior year.
Yes, so those students who stayed with us for those 3 years.
Okay. So what is the drop-off, if you will, of people who aren't in that 311 cohort, and how do we account for them or measure their growth?
So we look at all of our students in totality when we're looking at data and when we're dispatching interventions. This report, because of the way the goal is written, is simply reflective of those kids that we maintained for the 3 years because there's a growth score involved. So we don't necessarily look at them separately when we're working with them from the school level. We're working with all of them at the same time. So my kids that we're intervening with, my interventionists may have students that would not be captured within that 311. That's just for this reporting purpose.
Okay.
Because the kid could have transferred and not take the PSAT 8.
Yeah, or the student could have gotten here right as a junior, or they could have left us. And so there's no way when we're looking at the sustainability and we're looking at the growth piece.
311 is the cohort that we've had freshmen,
yes.
sophomores.
And to give you kind of a perspective, right now all of our classes are around 400-ish. The senior class I think is a little bit bigger. So we're looking at anywhere from 80 to 90 to even 100 students who either have come to us late or left us early in some capacity.
Thank you.
Allow me to geek out on data. So, where was I going with this? Okay, for this class of 2021, my curiosity immediately takes me to, I wonder what that class's freshman on track rate was when they were freshmen, because I can guarantee you that it wasn't 78%. It was probably closer to like 95, right? And so you see where I'm going with this. The discrepancy then starts to take place, right?
Yes.
Because if our freshman on track rate is so high, why are 22% and 27% of our students not meeting those benchmarks, right?
Correct.
So that was my first wonder. And then my second wonder is, I wonder how many students overlap in the did not meet or exceed in both ERW and math. And if so, what do we have in place for them? And then what's their breakdown? And I go back to what I asked 2 weeks ago, are these students from any particular feeder school? And then this is the class of 2021. They already graduated, right?
Yes.
So like again, right? What can we learn from these guys?
Yeah.
So that as we start to improve, right? As we all start to get better in our practice.
Absolutely.
What
What does it
lessons
tell
can be
us?
learned so that our current seniors and then our juniors and then, and so forth and so on.
And I think we've taken some intentional steps toward that in terms of getting in front of it. I think the STAR assessments are a big one.
Good.
And I also think that this year, the way that we started with a PSAT suite at the beginning of the year for all of our students, we are getting more useful data and being more mindful and more intentional about how we share that data and how the interventionists rally around that data, so that even though we're reporting it at a point where it's like, okay, I can't go get these kids now because they graduated, right? We are taking the action steps on the front end to be able to pull those kids out. And I could geek out on the idea of, right, the freshmen on track and how that translates into SAT scores, and then that leads us all down, Ramona knows where I'm going, all down a conversation about what do grades mean, and do grades necessarily, right, like do they translate into test scores? Right, so there's a lot to say about that.
I mean, I have a huge problem with FOT.
Absolutely, yes, yes, for sure,
But,
yes.
But at the end
but
of
I
the
like.
day, that's the standard we're being held to.
Absolutely, but I like what you're talking about in terms of, right, like matching up that freshman on track. And we know as an educational institution that the year that typically is the breakdown across the board is the sophomore year.
Yes,
I mean,
the forgotten
everywhere we
class.
go, right, everywhere we go. So it's really, when we look at action steps into the future as well in terms of aligning our curriculums, especially in English and math, and really looking at what those standards and those skills are to make sure that those gaps are closed ahead of time. That's really kind of where the money is, in being able to do that work to make sure that we learn from this data, but we're learning about it in a way that's actionable for kids that are still in the pipeline.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments?
I would say, I think a lot of my SAT success is directly from Miss Mina. Like her course, it was in 2 hours. I don't know what she did, but I am not good at math. I scored well on the math on the SAT. Largely
Well, we
because
have a very, Miss Mina is one of our interventionists, and we've been playing kind of with what that intervention looks like. So she has been doing some individual pullouts. She's been going into classes and doing whole class work with some of the math classes. We have a really unique gift in Bridget Watson, because Bridget Watson, as our CAP coordinator, is a certified English teacher, but she's like a class away from being a certified math teacher. And she says like, oh, I'll go get it if you want me to, Kylie, right? But she has the ability to do either, right? And so she really has the ability to go scoop up those kids when we practice test. That's some of the first data we used at the beginning of the year to generate those lists of kiddos who, oh, this was your score on the PSAT 9. Let's go grab you right now and start working right now on what those math and reading skills need to be to push you and grow you even more so you can get to that level at junior year.
Well, thank you both.
You see that
Any
time?
more questions
I'm
or
watching
comments? Are
time.
we
I'm
good?
giving
I feel I would be remiss if I didn't say nice job, Miss Mina, because when I met her, she made sure that I was going to. So
She's getting all kinds
I
of
hope she
shout outs.
is watching.
She's not going to be able to get through the door. Her head's going to be so big tomorrow.
Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, thank you. Thank
Dr.
you very
Freitas, did you
much.
have more to your report, or were you?
Those were my school performance report. I
Okay,
mean, I
thank
do
you.
have my individual updates.
Okay. Why don't we continue with that, just in the interest of staying somewhat on some
Thank you
kind
all
of
for
an agenda.
staying this evening.
Just
Yes,
give them
thank
the
you.
summaries of those, right, Dr.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
thank
see
you.
any questions submitted, so if you just want to
Okay.
touch on the highlights.
Yeah, so, the Satchel Screener, we administered in September, and we're doing it again for those students that we missed. And from that data, we've been able to create some Tier 2 groups, groups of students that maybe need help, with grieving or social skills. And we also have a Tier 3 support, and we're working with ALAB to give those students that one-on-one support. School culture and operations, parent-teacher conferences were very successful according to the input I received from parents and students. Parents were able to schedule conferences online, have really intimate conversations, and really, create a plan to work with the parents to help the students be successful. I just received nothing but compliments. And yeah, I mean, parents, I know we didn't have the in-person connection, but parents could always schedule an appointment with a teacher, and they could always meet, in school in person during a planning period or something of that nature. We held our first Race and Equity Committee October 14th. We discussed diverse hires the district made for the school year and the professional development led by Dr. Yvette Duviel on race and equity. Our current average daily attendance is 94% to date. Big shout out and congratulations to Mayan Covarrubias. She is the first state qualifier under Doug Schultz and first girls golf state qualifier in 3 years. I want to congratulate the boys cross country team for winning the Metro Suburban Conference. It was the first time since 2017. And to all the musicians and singers, the choir and jazz concert was outstanding. I was here with several hundred parents, and it was just it's great to be together. It's been a year and a half since we got to sing and perform indoors. So, we're back in business, right? Full activities, full enrollment, full programming, and the year has started off very well. So, compliment to all my staff members, my admin team, my district office, and our student board members. And that concludes my principal's report.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you,
Freitas.
Dr. Freitas.
I don't have any other report. Dr. Skinkis.
Yes, let me just, 2021-22 school year, first quarter of school year is completed. I want to thank the students and staff again for their efforts to comply with the safety protocol and that administration put in place, but also the mandates from the governor. The COVID dashboard has been updated as discussed at a previous meeting. We are now up to 72.1% of our students are vaccinated and submitted their vaccination card, 95.3% of our staff. So we're really doing a great job with that. Curriculum advisory, no updates. Facility advisory, no updates. Finance advisory is scheduled to meet early November. We'll go over the levy, the audit, and the enrollment projections, which the board will see the audit and the enrollment projections presentation at the November meeting. And then the levy is, hearing is in the December meeting. You'll have a chance to see a first read at the November board meeting as well. No updates on personnel policy or purchase, sale, lease of land. And I do have scheduled on my task list to send out a communication to the community stakeholder group that participated in the mission statement to give them notice about our meeting on December 11th for the goal setting. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Dr. Skinkis. I noticed that we did move over the audit. It's going to be a first read at the November board meeting, correct?
For their first read is in the packet tonight.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, please submit your questions before the November 9th meeting if you have any questions.
Okay.
And it does not get approved by the board. The board policy just requires that the board, the presentation on the audit be conducted with the board at a public meeting before we submit it to the state.
Thank you. Dr. Smetana?
Good evening. Tonight I will provide the Board of Education with information through the month of September, which represents 25% of our fiscal year. Beginning on Board Book page 156 is our monthly summary report. The total operating revenue for the month was $4,129,459, with 79% of that coming from property tax, 13% coming from student fees and registration fees, and 5% coming from evidence-based funding, which is our state funding. So this is the first month this year that we had started to receive some property tax, and that will go into October as well. The total operating expenditures for the month were $2,121,265, with 78% towards salary and benefits, 7% towards building level supplies, and 6% towards special education. If you go to Board Book page 158, you'll see the summary of revenues, which shows that the district has received 19.5% of our budgeted revenue for the year. Again, this amount is down from this time last fiscal year, which was 39%, due to the county delaying the deadline for the collection of property tax. Again, due to having a fund balance, we've been able to operate for the last 3 months without receiving the majority of our property tax payments, and hopefully we'll receive the remaining amount this month. The summary of expenditures shows that the district has spent 28% of our budgeted expenditures for the year, which is very similar to this amount at this time last year. Statement of revenue and expenditures report, as always, was included for the board for your information, and it includes all the revenues and expenditures for the month. There were some questions submitted. The question stemmed around explaining negative account balances, and this occurs for a few different reasons. So it first happens, if you go to the top of Board Book page 165, you'll see it happens with our summer accounts. We budget for our summer program as a whole, and then as our revenues and expenditures come in, we'll put them related to the specific program to track those accounts for accounting purposes. So that's why they have negative accounts for the expenditure side. Second, sometimes it occurs because it's an error. We use these reports that we receive every month to look at that percent column to see how things are tracking and to see what flags there are. So, for example, anything that is
at this point at or close to being over 100%, we'll look at. So for example, paid service and fiscal service, which is Board Book page 167, is over because food service was keyed there instead of food service. It was off by one number. So we catch that because it's over 100%, and then we'll do a journal adjustment with the township treasurer, and that'll be corrected in the, if not next month, the following month to come. And then lastly, sometimes it occurs because something came in more expensive than originally planned, or something unexpected needed to occur. And those need to be approved by myself. And when possible, we'll have that department spend less in a different account so that all of their accounts as a whole still come in within budget. So for example, if they have to spend some money in repairs, but we didn't budget for repairs, they'll spend that money in repairs because it's appropriate to put out of that account as opposed to supplies, but then they'll spend a little less in supplies whenever possible. Student activity account summary, again, I provided for your information. Keep in mind when you look at the activity accounts, negative account balances actually represent positive fund balances for those accounts. And then lastly, on Board Book page 175, I included the paid quarterly building rental report for the first quarter of this fiscal year. This only includes rentals that we've received or money for at this point. And the surplus for this quarter was $9,083.50. It's really difficult to compare this amount to previous years because it varies wildly. It also depends on when people actually pay their invoice. So when I provide the second quarter, I'll look and see if we're tracking appropriately, and then third quarter again, and we'll start to get more accurate as we go on throughout the year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Kristen, and you addressed the one question I believe that was submitted, correct?
Correct.
Good.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? I think we can move on to Ms. Harrison and Ms. Pinnigan.
One of them, you mentioned, she mentioned the real estate tax is not coming in until October 1st. There's been years where the real estate taxes, for whatever purpose, the county says they're going to be due December 1st. And so if the majority of the people will pay up until that point. However, I think our bonds are due like December 1st also. So without a fund balance for those months, we were, tight strapped years ago to make our bond payments because the county didn't do their job, as we say, and have the money due prior to December 1st. Now, usually it's due August 1st. And some of us pay in July because we get the bill, and some people pay right at the deadline, and then the money would roll in August. But in this year, we got a 2-month reprieve, so it didn't come in till October. That's why you see that our collections are down so much from 39% to 19.5%. But you just got to be aware that should something else happen, and our money, which is mostly real estate taxes, if that doesn't come in timely, we have bond payments to make in December. And so the point she made that we have this balance is a savior at times, because we could be in a position where we might have to borrow money just to make our bond payments if the county doesn't get our real estate taxes come in, because the majority of our money comes from real estate taxes, and the majority of our money goes out in salary, benefits, and building. And so to balance that, we need those taxes to come in timely.
You're referring to the years just post-2008.
The first 2 years Browner was in office, we actually had to take a loan to pay the bills.
On 23rd.
Yeah, I believe, Mike, you were on the board then.
We haven't had to take any tax anticipation. We haven't done any loans to pay bills. But my first year, 2011, was when we didn't get the money till almost December.
Right.
And we were,
we were bouncing around that tax anticipation
It was after the
loan, which is
real
an
estate
extra
inflation, the first
expense,
708, yeah.
which would be an extra expense we didn't necessarily budget for.
Right.
Mike, you're just, in summary, you're kind of just talking about why we need to continue
To have some fund
have a fund balance, because you never know when the state and the county are gonna pay us to pay the rest of our bills, correct?
And so tonight, we kind of glossed over it, but you have the audit, which is a first read. And in there is lots of information about those fund balances and where they are.
Yeah, I would also add, if you go on Board Book page 157, it goes over it provides information of the fund balances. And even though we receive property tax in the month of September, we haven't received all of our property tax. And so even just looking at the top of the amount of revenue that has come in this year versus the amount of expenditures just in our operating fund, so not even including debt service, we have overspent by over $2 million. So we have currently dipped into our fund balances for over $2 million just to continue to operate in these months in which we haven't received all of our property tax.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good observation.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, Kristen.
Students to the board.
So I would just say, I don't have much to say today, but I think right now there's a general tiredness in the building. Some people experience, seasonal tiredness, I would say, that's starting to kick in. It's terribly cold in the building today. I heard that a lot. So I think people are starting to feel some people feel the winter blues, but there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up that's kind of the culmination of work from the first quarter. I know Clarion has its first hard copy issue coming out on Friday. There have been concerts the past couple weeks. We're moving into winter seasons. Marching band is done. We're moving out of kind of football season more into basketball, other seasons. I know seniors are tired. November 1st is 6 days away. Need to stretch some time there. But I think that everyone is really into the swing of being in the building. There was some drama with the sauce, but people have kind of cooled down about that. I think that's all I've got.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Claire. I feel like it's been a really successful first quarter, and like she said, obviously everyone was trying to transition into being back into the routine of being in the building and doing in-person learning. And although we're still kind of seeing that transition with the students and being back in the building and all the things that Claire was talking about, I think everyone's adjusting well, and. I think the seniors as well have been stressed out with all the college applications, and I know it's really taken a toll on me personally, and I think that's contributing to a lot of what Claire was talking about, but I'm really excited for what's to come for the winter season.
Great. Well, take care of yourselves, and time change is not going to help, right?
No, it is going to help.
It is going to help. They'll get a little extra
I have it
sun.
backwards? Okay.
Yeah.
Fall back.
So there we go.
That's
Look forward to the time change then.
6th or whatever, so get your extra hour every
Right,
week.
right.
You get through the application process and you'll be okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think that we have so many great resources in the building that people are really realizing how lucky we are. I know myself, compared to a lot of friends that I have at other schools, they email their counselor, and a week later they have no response from their counselor. So then they email their counselor again, and there's still no response, and they need this 4 minutes, hurting their chance of their future and essentially the rest of their life. Whereas here, I email my counselor, or I go to see him, and he helps me immediately with what I need, and that's a ubiquitous response. I don't know of any people who they don't get a response from their counselor, or a teacher they need a recommendation letter from. I know that people are just really feel very supported by the people in the building, because it's a big process. It's scary to put everything you've ever done into this piece of paper and say, please accept me, that's all. But there are so many people in this building who are obviously here to help. And I think with the pandemic, we've really seen a focus on mindfulness and mental health. And I know some teachers are definitely taking a step back, especially this week, on work that they might not have in the past, just because they understand, some people are still taking standardized testing. Some people still haven't visited the schools they want to attend. And I think teachers are just being really great and very mindful of what's going on with their students.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that information.
Thank you, ladies.
It's good to hear.
Do we have anything on old business, Dr. Skinkis?
No updates on life safety at this time.
Any new business besides the audit for first read?
No new business.
Okay, and again, I would encourage everyone to review the audit and provide questions before next week's next meeting with the auditors.
We needed them ahead of time, please.
Thank you.
Can we get them prior to the finance advisory?
Yeah, the finance advisory is November 3rd, so if you could
Okay.
maybe get them to me by November 1st, maybe 2nd,
That's
that'd be
this
helpful.
Monday.
Tuesday then,
Yep. Okay.
The
a week
second,
from today,
Okay.
just so that if we could review them quickly with the auditor could
Sure.
scan through them.
Thank you. Any visitor statements? I don't think we have anyone here for visitor statements. We did not have any discussion items, any consideration of items for future meetings. I didn't hear anything previously, but I'll look around again. Matters for closed session, personnel, student discipline, purchase, sale, lease of real property, probable imminent pending litigation, collective negotiations, school safety. Do we have reason for closed session, Dr. Skinkis?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, student discipline, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable imminent or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Can we get a second?
second,
Second, Mike Welch.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Gasko?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Van Horst?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
yes.
And Ms. Sick?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Hey.